FIA FR World Cup this year for 2024, the 71st Macau Grand Prix. Single-seaters were the first machinery on track this morning. Normally we would have them at Macau Motorcycle Grand Prix bikes. The 56th edition this weekend would have had free practice this morning at 7:45. But they didn't take to the circuit this morning. They don't go onto the gear circuit here at Macau if it's wet. They don't even have the option to do so. They don't have wet tyres available because it would be such a challenge for motorcycles. So therefore, their free practice session has been carried over to tomorrow, first thing tomorrow morning, because it was wet this morning, and it was therefore wet when the FR cars went out on circuit. The single-seaters that occupy the garages down in pit lane came out on a very, very wet circuit this morning. Right, it's a little bit nicer for them this time. It's going to be the first opportunity that they've been out on circuit without huge balls of spray around every car out on circuit. However, David Addison in the commentary box with me, it is still a bit wet.
It is, and the last session for GT cars was affected by, I suppose, squally weather. The drizzle kept coming and going, and it never went away, but it never became anything more. It just teased the teams, but the session did get slower. But now the pressure is on. They've had free practice, the one session. Now they've got to go for a time. It's qualifying, and they don't know whether they can rely on tomorrow's session being drier or not. So they've got to get a banker lap in here. And for many of these drivers who are new to the circuit, and some are new to the cars as well as the circuit, it's pressure time. Wet tyres for some. May well be that we're going to see a tyre change as the session goes on.
This is remarkable, isn't it? It is a combined qualifying that they have over two qualifying sessions, the end of today and the end of tomorrow. But we don't know what the conditions are going to be. As you say, tomorrow it's going to be potentially a changeable day. It was changeable yesterday. It was wet, and then it was dry, and it was wet. That's the way it's been today. Okay, wetter today than it was yesterday. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And this is the first competition that we've had on circuit this weekend, and it is also the first time that they've been out on a dry circuit. So 40 minutes, what's going to happen?
You reckon this is dry? I mean, it's dry-ish, drier, certainly, yeah. But wet tyres, and that surprises me because I wouldn't have thought it was wet enough for wets, but it's probably peace of mind that they're after, at least for a couple of quick laps, before they think about slicks.
Wet track declared, so yeah. Every time we've had a session today, it has been declared wet conditions.
But that puts the onus on the teams to make the tyre choice. It is probably worth an exploratory lap on the wets.
Yeah.
And once the bulk of the field do it, then everybody kind of follows suit. Had somebody gone for slicks, you might find that the catalyst in that direction, and it will come, I'm sure.
And also, if we're going to have no rain for the next 40 minutes, what better way to help dry out the circuit than wet tyres?
True enough. So if it stays as it is with no further rain, later in the session, certainly you can anticipate pit stops to go on to a set of slick tyres. So the best time that we had this morning was Oliver Goethe, who was absolutely mighty to be 2 seconds quicker than Freddie Slater. Alex Dunne was third, Noel was fourth. One driver that found the wall rather substantially was James Wharton, the Australian driver. A legacy of his accident is that his car, which comes out of the ART Grand Prix operation, that's had an engine change.
Has it? Okay.
And there is Tuukka Taponen, who was the FR Middle East champion back at the start of the year. There is Jin Nakamura for the Toms Formula team, Toms being Tachi Oiwa Motorsport, which has run cars, built engines, built cars as well. There was a Toms F3 chassis, if you remember, in the early 1990s that Rickard Rydell, amongst others, was a race winner in. Good creative crash helmet design for Nakamura. That's the man that was quickest this morning then, Oliver Goethe, the Red Bull Junior, with the Rofco legend on the side, the company of his father. And Oliver Goethe good to go, as also there is Rikuto Kobayashi, who was in the barriers quite early on in the earlier session. So Kobayashi needs a bit of mileage out of this qualifying session, as well as a decent lap time.
With the raw carbon look on that car, yeah. It looks mean and stealth, doesn't it?
All these cars are the same. They're all Tatius F3T 318 chassis. They've got 2-litre Renault engines. They've got 4 sets of Pirelli slicks, so they don't want to be wasting a set on a damp road, you could argue. They want to use them when it's totally dry. But we're in business. Qualifying 1 for the FR World Cup. The Macau Grand Prix is underway. There's a whole queue of cars ready to go. We're in business. This, for the first time, for the 71st running of the Macau Grand Prix, is a qualifying session, and it is absolutely essential now to keep it off the wall.
Competition starts right here. It's been free practice all the way up until this, and this is the only competitive session that we have today. The first of the qualifying sessions, 40 minutes around the Kia circuit here at Macau. And, well, let's just have a look as we follow them round, how much of the circuit is dry, how much is wet, and how much is really wet, because it's a long circuit, this, and it goes up, it goes down, and it twists around the hills around Macau. So potentially, as we look down there, it looks to be pretty damp heading up San Francisco Hill. They then head up towards Maternity, and the twisting nature of the circuit, the walls either side, the barriers either side, this is where it gets really rather tight. And as we watch the quickest car from this morning, Oliver Goethe, the #1 car, threading its way, leading the rest of the field around. I wonder what the feedback's going to be from the drivers as they've reached around about half distance around the lap, as to whether it's going to be a compromise, whatever, isn't it?
Yeah.
But is it going to be a wet tyre? Is it going to be a dry tyre? Or can we have an intermediate, please?
That's what they'd like.
Yeah,
because that's where the track surface is right now.
Yeah,
but
is,
I think the reason they're not bailing for slicks now is that you're going to spoil a set drying the road with them.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a case of having to wait for them to come up to temperature. The road isn't dry enough, and by the time it is, you'll have taken so much life out of them that it's not worth it. So you might as well waste the wets, because as you've made the point, if we're going to have the 2 races, which are the important bits, on a dry track surface, let's waste these wets. We're stuck with them.
Let's have slick tyres for the racing.
Yeah, but only when it's a bone dry, dead set, bone dry circuit. This isn't, so let's not waste them.
And these wet tyres, if everyone worked together and said, OK, let's spend the first 20 minutes, dry the circuit, keep the wet tyres on, and then we'll have competition over the final 20 minutes. It won't happen.
No.
But it'd be great if it did.
It would indeed. You can see a bit of weaving going on to get some warm into the tyres. The interesting thing will be who and when is the first one to blink and go for slicks to roll the dice. But we're not there yet.
Certainly not, but we're moving up the pace now, aren't we?
So 2:41 is the benchmark time. Now, granted, the first session of the day was quite a long time ago, and it was on a wet road that was drying, wasn't it?
Big balls of spray for the majority of it.
Yeah, that's true. So it's much, much drier already.
Yeah.
So we should be on immediately for quicker lap times. What we might also be seeing are drivers going to the wetter parts of the circuit to keep these wets alive.
Keep the tyres as cool and as long life as they can,
Because eventually you're going to want the slicks. Trouble is, and they're all going to face this, if you look at the circuit now, should you get to the point where you are on a push lap and you need to overtake, overtaking is offline, offline is wet. Wet, not good for your slicks.
Just having a look at the grandstand as well, gives us a barometer of whether we've got a sprinkling of rain at the moment. I don't think so, but it's certainly very windy, and I'm sure that there are parts of the circuit that these cars, these FR cars, are going to be affected by this wind.
Yeah, you'd like to think that it's the faster, more open parts of the circuit down from the start line to Lisboa, where it might be more of an issue, because this is the slower section anyway, the twistier mountain part of the circuit. However, right now, Oliver Goethe presses on, and he will be the first driver really to offer us up. Oh dear, big damage already sustained there by Liu Rui-Chi, and the PHM racing car brings out the red flag.
Yeah, Liu Rui-Chi's car is unfortunately deranged at the fronts, and therefore it won't take a moment to lift that car, get it out the way. That's going to be purple crane that's going to be brought into action. That's a pretty big piece of kit as well.
Understeers out wide, loses the back, and kaboom.
Doesn't take much there, does it? And it's pretty wet there as well.
Yeah.
Pretty damp on that run through Lisboa.
But again, the line he was on was going to be wetter because it's not where you want to be. So no one's tried that.
Yeah.
So once he was wrong, it was always going to end badly, I think. So big shame for Liu Rei-Chi, who in the free practice session earlier on was 20th out of the 27. We have 27, although only 26 did a time. Kai Darianani not being able to do a lap this morning. So the crane...
I mean, I hate to go on about this, but look at the reach on that crane. It's really impressive.
It is. What we need first, though, is permission for the marshal to go trackside to attach Part A to Part B. So, awaiting instruction.
Already the flatbed recovery vehicle is in place, so once the car is lifted and swung over the barrier, it can be on its way back to the paddock and we can get things quickly back underway.
And because this is qualifying, the clock, as you can see, stops. So they're not losing any track time out of this. And also, of course, the road is drying. The longer the session lasts, the drier the road will be. Even if it's only the ambient temperature helping to evaporate some of the water, it's all helping.
I have to wiggle the car just to get the nose out because they do get pointed straight into that tyre barrier down there.
So a few more hands on deck, I think, but we're almost good. And then it's up and away. So it doesn't take long from the last car arriving in the pit lane to get things back underway. Again, interesting to see now whether any team says, OK, we'll go for slicks now.
Do you think they will?
Well, no, because I don't think it's dry enough.
No.
But now would be the opportune situation in which to do it under a red flag, because you're not then losing live track time, if you see what I mean. If this were 20 minutes later, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think they might be counting on the fact there might be another stop of the session?
Yes.
I think there might be.
So more and more drivers heading into the pit lane, and do the marshals want some help to make some barrier repairs there, possibly? Because are they tyres down there strapped together down at this bar? I thought so.
Yeah, I thought so too.
But if that belting is punctured, they might want that.
They need to maybe work on that. Yeah.
So an early stoppage, and nobody yet has done a lap time.
Just having a look what was happening before. Alex Dunne had put in a purple sector on that last lap, hadn't he? On sector 4. Alex Dunne, who was very impressive last year, his first appearance at the Macau Grand Prix in different cars. This the first year we've had the FR cars competing. We've had F4 cars for a few years here competing for the Macau Grand Prix, and we've had Formula 3 cars, FIA Formula 3 cars, and FR cars this year, which is very much in the spirit. We were saying it this morning, weren't we? The spirit of the Macau Grand Prix for many, many years, to have champions from various championships around the world all coming here to compete, almost like who is the king of the king.
Exactly. Yeah, like a shootout at the end of the season. And Alex Dunne, as you say, a talented young driver. He was the runner-up last year in GB3. British F4 champion 2 years ago. Tough season this year in FIA Formula 3. 14th in the championship. And there you look at the wet tyre that adorns number 16, James Wharton's car, complete with its new engine. James did a couple of races in GB3 this year, Australian karting champion, UAE Formula 4 champion, and was second in the FR Europe Championship this year with 4 wins. So he's one of the favourites, I would think, for this weekend. Right, track is clear, and the session is going to be underway in about a minute and a half, just over. So we're almost ready to go back into business. As you see, Tuukka Taponen, who lots of people are tipping for a win this weekend, but he didn't really get a chance to sparkle in free practice. He was 5th in that, but Taponen was the FR Middle East champion back at the start of the season, 5 times a winner, and 3rd behind James Wharton in the FR Europe Championship. Same number of wins as Wharton, 4, but was 3rd in the championship. And Taponen, a member of the Ferrari Driver Academy. 1 or 2 more that you can see, including their Kanato Lee for ART Grand Prix.
few of them are having little tweaks to set up down in pit lane, maybe a little tweak on the front wing or something like it, but I think we should soon be getting this session back underway with 35 minutes and 33 seconds left to run. Didn't get much done during that, did we?
No. No, nobody's done a lap time yet.
No.
So Lure Chi, the one that, I'm afraid, spoilt the party. Next one there you can see is Jin Nakamura, another of the Tom's Formula drivers. And Nakamura staying on his wets, getting ready for the resumption of the session. On some Super GT this last season as well. There is Rikuto Kobayashi.
I haven't seen anyone changed.
No.
All on wets.
No. Japanese F4 champion last year, Kobayashi. And in the Super Formula lights as teammate to his teammate here, in fact, Jin Nakamura. So they've been together all season and are together here as well. Green flag, Alan.
Here we go then. Down pit lane they go. They are pretty much, let's have a look at just as they leave pit lane. If anybody happens to be on a tyre other than a wet tyre, which I doubt very much that they will be. But, you know what, maybe it is a lot wetter out there than maybe we give it credit from looking on the television screen, because everybody leaves pit lane on a wet tyre. Don't think it's raining out there at the moment, is it? It is raining. Okay. So word coming back that it is still raining, so yeah, we're not going to see a change of tyre, are we?
No, not yet. Depends how serious this rain is, but for the moment everyone is happy to be on a wet tyre. Right, so we're back in business, and really the session starts here, doesn't it? Because nothing had been achieved hitherto, so now we reset and go again.
So if they're going to stay on wet tyres throughout the duration of today, and it is dry tomorrow, then today's qualifying session is going to count for very, very little. However, it could be a lot wetter tomorrow than it is now. It could be like we had first thing this morning, which was very, very wet, big balls of spray. We wouldn't have been able to see two cars in that shot this morning.
No, right. And that's why that is such a costly error from Lure Chi, because he might well have needed a banker lap, and he hasn't even got that. They're the Prema team, the Theodore squad, keeping everybody back and waiting, because everybody else would have disappeared now. They've got clear real estate around them, so they've got the road to themselves.
I don't know why more teams don't think of doing that, you know. I don't know what's to be gained by going out in the huge collection of cars right at the start.
And they've also spaced them a little bit as well. So there's a bit of daylight around each one. Those three cars being Dino Beganovic, that had a crash in FP this morning, Freddie Slater and Alex Dunne.
So now, whatever happens, the majority of the field are going to be in traffic now, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Self-induced traffic.
Well, you blame the mechanic for releasing you at the time, but yes, you're right.
Exactly, yeah.
But equally, you know, you can't, not everybody can space themselves out. This is where they try and stack the field up behind a little bit, let the car ahead get away. So you've got a bit of a gap ready for the start of your flying lap next time through. Some achieve it better than others.
So we're nearing the end of the lap. If you can get as much heat into a wet tyre as you possibly can on the parts of the circuit that are conducive to doing that, this is one of them, to weave the car if you can and get a bit of heat into the tyre. Set yourself up for the first of the flying laps during this qualifying session. Oliver Goethe is going to be the first to go onto that flying lap across the line. Here we go.
And he was the man that starred in the free practice period this morning. So coming out of Reservoir Bend, then speed building all the time. This part of the circuit gives no suggestion that it's raining, does it? It still looks damp offline, but a lot better than it's done pretty much all day. And Goethe then now goes through Mandarin down towards Lisboa, getting away from the traffic behind, going for the dry line for the moment. Down to Lisboa, sets the car up, and this has got to be neat and smooth and committed, and it is every one of those things as he comes now out the other side, steering between the wet part on either side of him.
San Francisco Hill and the climb up towards the tightest section of the circuit now, with the wall on the right, the wall on the left. The barriers get tighter and tighter as he threads his way around. Wall on the left-hand side, around Teddy Ip and Maternity. There we go, down towards the left-hander at Teddy Ip, and then on towards the Solitude S's, where the car from left to right, very tight and twisty section of the circuit. I love some of the camera shots here where you can see them working at the wheel inside the cockpit, and working they are. So close to the barrier on the left-hand side.
And even on the part of the circuit where in theory you might be able to relax a little bit, the speeds are so high that it's almost more mentally demanding. So through Moorish, and then Police comes a sideways Goethe there. The back trying to wag, but he corrected that, but a little bit too much speed carried down the hill.
Wow. You don't have too many moments like that, do you?
Not that you can get away with, that's for sure. Not here.
On to Donna Maria.
Yeah.
That's the left-hander. Barrier tight on the right-hand side towards Melko. The hairpin, no overtaking. And then you see the green flashing LED panel after that point. Overtaking allowed once more. It's a yellow panel light, a yellow flag throughout the course of the weekend. And now the circuit opens up.
So out of Fisherman's Bend towards the R Bend comes the Red Bull liveried car of Oliver Goethe. Most of the corner names here relate to something nearby.
Oh.
Big damage now in the wall. That is going to be another red flag. And is that the American driver Jet Bowling who has gone into the wall? The Kiwi Motorsport car is very badly damaged. And the red flag is shown. This is Tuukka Taponen, who is on a quick lap, but it's all going to be for nothing because the red flag is out. And he will have just got a lap time in that was good enough to be second fastest. So Goethe, Taponen and Rini Cella have done a time. Nobody else has. So Taponen just got through before the red flag. So the lap that he's on counts for nothing, but the one he's completed was enough to put him second. Wow.
A qualifying session in segments, this, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have only completed 10 minutes of the 40 for this qualifying session for the FIA FR World Cup here at Macau, the Macau Grand Prix, and with a fastest time, 2:32.4 for Oliver Goethe.
That's coming out of Police, isn't it? The Moorish Police right section.
Yeah.
It's the second element of it, I think.
It's Moorish, yeah.
Sideways, whacks the wall, destroys the rear and the left, and then hits the barrier again. So Jet Bowling, American Carter, had a rather nasty accident back in 2021, broke a rib, and he thought about walking away from the sport, but then decided, no, I'm going to carry on. His father was a massive supporter and has been one of the front runners in the FR Americas Championship as well this season. Bowling Senior went for good names with his sons, Jet and Cash, the two children.
They are good American
cool names, aren't they?
Yeah, very cool names.
His brother's a photographer, and this, I'm afraid, is a rather sorry picture, as he just got it sideways, bang, and lots of damage done in a very short space of time.
Yeah. And you can also see that the barriers do what the barriers are meant to do, to contain the accident, to absorb the impact. And unfortunately, the net result of that is plenty of damage to the car. So that's not going to be an early night, is it, for the Kiwi Motorsport team?
No, afraid you're right. So that car with a lot of damage, and the American driver new to the circuit, of course. Now we've got a lot to ponder. It's a shame that red flag came out when it did, because we'd had an absolute best in the first sector from the Kazakhstan driver Alexander Dunne. But the lap was taken away on the basis that the red flag came out, and therefore he couldn't get to the end of it.
Seeing more tweaking to front wings as well. I keep looking at this strapping on the where the roof would be on the grandstand. See how windy it is.
Yeah. Well, the flags above the pit lane are getting ever more blown around. So lots of marshals on the scene, and it's to get rid of all the debris, which is scattered over quite a radius now. So Jet Bowling is out of the car, walks away. Medical team will make sure he's all right, and the larger parts of an FR car put behind the barrier. One thing you have got to do for the Macau weekend, order plenty of spares.
Quite right. And as we have a look at the cars, even time for a bit of a wipe there in pit lane. Is that with a specific reason for the number 14 car?
I think just to make sure that there's nothing that might get sucked into the side pods when it's at speed. Because the street circuit will have all sorts of bits and bobs lying around that you don't want to get drawn into anywhere that could do any mechanical damage.
Théophile Nael's car that was just being checked over.
And those that got through onto a flying lap, like Valerio Rinicella, come down the pit lane now. Rinicella, protege of Giancarlo Fisichella, and Marco Ciocci, Ferrari racers both. Rinicella, 20th in the European FR Series this year. And the car dragged back into its garage.
Previously third in the Spanish F4 Championship. And it used to be said about Formula 3, probably 20 years ago, that it was a 2-year assault, that you had to sort of find your feet in the first year and then maybe have an attack for the title in the second year. F4 seems to be that way as well, doesn't it, these days? And drivers that stay in F4 for maybe 1 year and then move on to something like these FR championships that appear around the world, then maybe it's the 2-year assault on these titles.
But if you can do it in 1 year, it illustrates your ability, doesn't it?
Oh yes,
and
very much so.
From the next rung up, it's like the holy grail to find somebody that can jump through the ranks. And occasionally they happen. Think Kimi Räikkönen, Formula Renault to Formula 1.
Which was an astonishing step at the time, wasn't it? UK Formula Renault.
That's right. And people said, oh, he shouldn't be doing that. And then he became a world champion, which rather proved that he did have the ability.
And that year, he was also doing national service.
That's right. Yeah.
So there was a weekend, was there not, at Donington, where I chatted to him in the pit lane. I think you were there as well. And he said, yeah, this morning I was just doing a bit of square bashing or whatever it was they were doing in the morning, and catch a flight and then get in the Formula Renault car, put it on pole and set yourself up for the weekend.
I had it in my mind that he started 1 year of Britain and then had to bail for the national service and came back the year after, and that's when he mocked up.
Is that what happened?
I think it was something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, he rather proved the point of how good he is. There you can see Evan Giltaire, French driver for ART Grand Prix, and like many, yet to do a lap time. Number 6 is Tuukka Taponen, the R-Ace GP entry. And Taponen, who has come effectively into FR this season after a good pedigree in F4 and the Formula Academy Finland prior to that. He's part of the Ferrari Driver Academy. Number 18 is Kanato Lee, Japanese driver under a British license, and somebody that we've seen racing in British F4 in the last few seasons. Another of the Red Bull drivers, Enzo Deligny, born in Shanghai. Father used to be a one-make VW racer, and Macau debut for Deligny. Jin Nakamura, one of the two quick Tom's Japanese representatives, and everybody's still happy to be on the wet tyre. So as the road dries a touch, and certainly is getting clearer of debris, there Ugo Ugochukwu, the very tall American McLaren development driver, McLaren Junior, 11th in FR in Europe this year.
Third in British F4 the previous year. And you're right to say, a tall driver. Don't know how he quite fits in the tub of this car, because he's incredibly tall.
Yeah. And there is the only palindromic driver on the grid, Noel, who was here last year and is pretty rapid. So still no restart time being confirmed as Sota Ogawa gets ready to go. So the car of the American driver, Jet Bowling, being retrieved. Murray Boyer now wheels off. Now, is that for a setup adjustment? I think it is, because the wets are by the side of the car. They've not got slicks by the side of the car. So I think that's for an adjustment more than anything to do with tyres. And in fact, there, spots of rain back on the camera.
I was going to say, the security man that's standing in front of us with a poncho and takes his hood on and off has just put the hood back up.
Oh.
So that is our barometer. Yep, hood's going up and umbrellas being very tightly hung on to. So it's blowy, it's wet, it's
Macau.
It's well, no, that's unfair. It's I've never known it like this.
No.
I have never ever known it like this. But there is a windy season for sure here at Macau, but it's not normally the time of year that coincides with the Grand Prix. You just see the trees over there. It's really very blustery.
Dino Beganovic having a little adjustment, but that car good to go, as also is Tiago Rodrigues there, another of the Evans GP entries, Mitch Evans' team, Formula E star. And Tiago Rodrigues, who was the Chinese F4 champion last year, so he was here 12 months ago in the first weekend in the Formula 4 event that we had, as was this man, Freddie Slater, who was impressive then and continues to impress.
16 years of age is Freddie. Quite incredible what these young drivers do. What's the quickest car you'd like to drive around the gear circuit here at Macau?
What's the what, sorry?
What's the quickest car you'd like to drive around the circuit? Yeah.
I'll be very happy in a little road sport.
So would I, yeah. Very happy. And they're 16 years old and competing in a powerful single-seater around the streets of Macau. That's incredibly impressive. Alex Dunne was incredibly impressive last year, 18 years old. He is the qualified 6th last year, 2nd in the qualification race, and then crashed out of the final, unfortunately.
You talk about 16-year-olds and racing at Macau and being impressive. It's the only time they can legally drive on the road.
It's a very good point.
Or a road, yeah.
It's a very good point, well made, yeah.
Rashid Daheri for the PHM racing team. Teammate Matteo De Paolo behind him. There is Alexander Abkhazova for Santaloc, which is normally thought of as a GT team, Sebastian Chatai's team, but has expanded through French F4 and then Spanish F4 into FR racing. There for Pro Racing, number 26, that is Matteo De Paolo. And still, I'm afraid, no news as to a resumption time. But the road is getting much wetter. There's not much argument now. It's proper raining.
You're right.
Right, so there is the car free of the wall. Took a little bit of dislodging, I think, that. And now that it's gone, just the last few bits and pieces can be swept up or kicked out of the way. And then we'll be in business. And just to make sure that the all the track furniture is in place. Now they've got that car extricated. I think they seem to be reasonably happy that they have done. So that's good news as the track workers make their way back to post. Just that little bit of debris which will be taken care of, no doubt. But this is good news. Yeah.
So we've only had 10 minutes of this session.
It feels like longer.
Yes, it does.
Yes, and we are into the last minute of stoppage time, so we're going to get back underway at 15:55 local, and it's just now 45 seconds away from that, so we're almost good to go again. So what we've been saying about the importance of qualifying and the need to get a banker lap because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, they didn't listen to us. That's 2 red flags.
No, I know. And at the start of this session, it was quicker than it's going to be, I think, for the rest of the session. The rain coming down now. It's getting wetter again. It was at its driest right at the start. So, well, let's see what's going to happen. Let's have a look at the weather forecast as well for tomorrow, but not until the morning.
So, 10 seconds to go. Those lights are ready to blink to green and get the resumption of the session underway with once more that mad scramble to get out there. And we'll see which of the savvy teams which are learning and will be prepared to lag back. There's not much lagging there, look. Oliver Goethe, I think, is going to go out a little bit later, but his teammates have fled. So there's the queue of cars, as I say, everybody in the same Tatius Renault chassis, an engine combination, Pirelli tyres for everybody as well. The only variable, therefore, in this session is down to tyre choice, but I think we've had so much rain, forget slips.
We've got the spray back.
Yeah, it's wet enough now to be wet all the way to the end.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Yep, so those early session quick lap times, they may well count to be extremely important in qualifying over the course of today and tomorrow. Oliver Goethe's time, a 2:32.482. And I reckon now with these balls of spray, it looks a lot more like when we saw the cars out on circuit first thing this morning.
So, if the track surface now is as wet as it is, what we're looking at is the battle to be fourth fastest, because they're not going to be able to threaten the 3 times that were done on a dry-ish road. And already we've got people in trouble.
Already.
Up the escape road down at Lisboa has their gone 55, which is Rotaro Sato, son of Takuma Sato. But yeah, the road is wetter, therefore we're looking at times that are going to be slower than they were before the red flag, and we only got 3 of those in. So Goethe, Taponen and Rinicella have timed it right by being able to be at the front of the queue and get a lap time in. So Sato will try to rejoin, and we'll see how close to those earlier times we can actually get. What that also proves, not that they necessarily would have known it, Alan, is that Prema's trick of lagging back for clear track space went against them, because they weren't able to get the lap in before the red flag.
It totally did. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. Well, you have to take, as a team, you have to take a decision. You have to take a choice. Yeah. It's a roll of a dice. Sometimes it may pay off, and sometimes it definitely doesn't.
And now they've gone out with everybody else, but stuck in traffic. So, yeah, which is the lesser of the evils. Yeah, what Prema, in fairness, did not know was that there was going to be a stoppage in quite the way that it came about. However,
you can never count on anything at Macau.
No, you can have the best plan, the best strategy, and somebody else can kick it into the long grass for you.
You're right. Anything can happen at Macau.
This is the very slow run to the Melco hairpin, where not only is it slow because it's a tight corner, but people are slowing down so that the car ahead can sort of escape up the road, and then you speed up and try and get a bit of a gap so you don't get into traffic.
So it's difficult. It's so difficult. We've got 3 times that have been set, and the rest of them have yet to set a time. And we were saying this morning in free practice, what can be achieved by being on the circuit the way it is? A lot was achieved this morning because we've now got the same conditions this afternoon in qualifying as we had first thing. Right,
I'm intrigued to see how close we get to those lap times, but it's a proper wet road again, I'm afraid to say.
It is.
Not that it looks wet consistently all the way around. It's certainly quite wet where we are at the start and finish line. Macau being one of the few places where the start and finish line are the same thing. Because quite often you have a different place for a start line compared to the timing line. Anyway, that's another rabbit hole not to go down. Number 3 you're looking at then, pressing on, that being the third of the MP Motorsport entries for Matteo Colnaghi. Did Oliver Goethe go out? No, Goethe and Taponen are still sitting in the pit lane. I would not be surprised if they stayed there, because they've nothing to achieve.
Why would they go out?
Absolutely.
Absolutely nothing to be achieved, and potentially a lot to be lost.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, you could argue they're going to get mileage and track experience. Well, Goethe doesn't need it because he's been here before. Taponen hasn't, okay. But if he's confident enough to be able to do that lap time, don't think he necessarily needs to drive around and admire the scenery, does he?
Pop the kettle on and watch the telly for the next half an hour.
Now there is Ugo Ugochukwu. And have we had a car in the wall? There was one of the MP Motorsport cars in the background that looked a little bit crab-like. We're getting a replay here also of more drama down at Lisboa. And Kai Darianani going straight on up the escape road and very nearly tangling Evan Giltaire with him. Darianani was the first casualty of the day up the escape road, right at the very start of free practice, and never got a lap time in that session. And the British driver is in further strife. Yeah, that car has been in the wall, hasn't it? Look, it is crab-like,
yeah,
and it's been tweaked at the back. Now, is that Rinicello or is that Colnaghi? I think it is Colnaghi's car.
We shall see in due course. It's heading down from the Macau hairpin down towards the completion of the lap and into pit lane. 24 minutes just over.
Yeah, past us has just gone Rinicello, so there it is, Matteo Colnaghi, and you can see he bounced it off the barrier. He's tweaked the suspension, and I'm being polite when I say tweaked. So he's heading for the pit lane with a very, very crab-like car.
Yeah, really difficult. So straight into pit lane. So that's been costly, hasn't it?
When you say straight into, I know what you mean, but it's just slightly off straight, isn't it?
Doing a good job of doing it.
Yeah, exactly. He did a good job of getting around the Macau hairpin as well in that state. Say. Right, there is James Wharton going through, another fancy runner this weekend. So the last lap that people have done, 2:37, Alex Dunne, 2:32 is the best. So 5 seconds difference in the wet. There's your answer. And it's getting wetter rather than drier.
So Alex Dunne briefly best of the rest, other than the 3 that set the time early on, but that now changes. Aldaheri is now best of those out on circuit at the moment. Freddie Slater second, Matteo De Paolo third, and that relates to 4th, 5th and 6th overall. Red flag again, red flag.
Now, for why this time? I'm not aware that we'd seen a car off, unless it's the weather.
We haven't. Just seeing if we can find out whereabouts around the circuit that is.
I can't believe it's the weather, because it's not as bad as it was for free practice, and that ran. So unless it's Darianani who didn't get out of the escape road, and they don't want the car left there because if anybody else goes off, they'll encounter it. So let's wait and find out. But third stoppage.
Not the work of a moment to find out when you've got these huge balls of spray around the circuit. We've got multiple camera points around the circuit, but picking things out in a ball of spray, not always easy.
So again, the clock stops. You've no plans for dinner, have you? We could be a while yet before we get to the end of the session. I say that rather facetiously because there is the curfew to get the roads open, and it is Darianani's car, look, and he's failed to do the U-turn, so it's now effectively blocking the escape road, and that just can't be allowed to sit there.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that that has to be a stoppage rather than getting the crane to it under a, let's say, a full course yellow. And
it looks like that can be moved just on those little dollies that fits underneath the wheels. So was that not an escape road? Something is wrong with the car, is it? Is that why he went down the escape road?
I think he just understeered it off, or arrived too quickly and couldn't make the corner, went up the escape road, and has then, in the process of trying to turn it, stalled it, can't refire it.
Right.
You can't leave it where it was on the escape road, it's got to be moved. But these days, the FIA's governing regulations for the sport say that if you're going to have marshals trackside, it's either got to be under a safety car or a red flag.
Yeah.
You can't have it during a live session. So you have to stop it, marshals quickly get the incident sorted out, and you go again. Rui Marquez is the race director for the Macau Grand Prix, the FR World Cup this weekend, before he takes over next weekend in Las Vegas, the Formula 1 race director's role, which was announced yesterday, a couple of days ago. So a big surprise, but bravo, well done Rui Marquez, very experienced race official. So everybody comes back down the pit lane.
I've started tally marks for the first time today.
Oh.
Red flags.
Right, so we're up to three.
Yeah. It is, and the only reason I've done that is because sometimes it's difficult to remember when you get these constant interruptions. You don't really get into any kind of flow of the session, and you look back and you think, how many stoppages have we had?
And who caused the first one?
honest, I have no idea.
Right.
I can't remember. Can you?
Yes. I can't remember how to pronounce his name, but Lu Rei Chi is the answer.
Oh, well done. Yeah. You're right.
Thank you. So,
it says here.
The session suspended again. Some of the cars, when they get to the pit lane, are being taken to the scrutineering area. Others released to the teams. So there is Valerio Rinicella, still third fastest. Comes down the pit road. And what have we got left? 23 minutes, effectively, in a very, very bitty session.
Yeah, very difficult. No flow. What you want to do is to get a few laps in, so you can do it in whatever conditions, just so you can get into some kind of a groove and get into some kind of a flow. But they're not able to do that, and it's very difficult.
I know the weather has got quite a lot to say about that, but the one session that we've gone through without any interruption at all has been the one for the real AMs, the earlier road sport session. And there is another road sport session to come, which has been cleverly put at the end of the day because they've got headlights.
It has, and we are losing light, aren't we? It's getting darker and darker, and it's been pretty dark and gloomy all day, but darkness descends, nighttime darkness descends over this area of the world quite quickly, and by 6 o'clock it's pretty much ready to go, which is great news for all the hotels and casinos, because Macau at nighttime lights up like nowhere else in the world.
Yeah, I'm still surprised that one year they can't persuade Macau as an entity that what you need is just one day where we'll open the roads a bit later, because a night race around here with all the casinos lit up would look pretty awesome.
Wouldn't it just?
I mean, yes.
Wouldn't it just?
The Macau Grand Prix puts Macau on the map globally, fine. And what you see is fascinating, and it gives you a taste of Macau.
Yeah.
But what we see at night is a different place altogether when it's all lit up.
It really is. I get a huge amount of joy taking people around for the first time at night time. I did it with you. I've done it with Chris, who is the circuit commentator. I've done it with Stephen, one of our journalists, here for the first time this weekend. I get a great deal of joy taking them to a couple of the sort of highlight hotels, which happened for me umpteen years ago. And you take them there and you just see the wonderment. Yes, this is a hotel lobby, correct. Yes, there is a huge tree.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah.
It's just wonderful.
No, an Alan Hyde guided tour is quite something, especially when you end up in the courtroom the morning after. So, quite something. So everybody back into the pit lane, and we are about 10 seconds away, because it was an easy move once the marshals were allowed trackside. So the green flag is going to be waved now.
For a remaining just under 23 minutes of this qualifying session, the first qualifying session of the weekend for the 2024 Macau Grand Prix, the 21st Macau Grand Prix here. Under wet conditions all day today. We've had one or two sessions that were drying, but predominantly wet sessions today. And this is not going to be nice, is it? That view from the cockpit, the ball of spray that you'll be driving just behind, not very nice indeed.
I've just been reminded by Dutch journalist René de Boer that there is actually a night race every night, and it's between the taxis and the local traffic. So there is one. Yeah. Right, we're back in business then. Still a wet and slippery surface, and forget banker laps, because everyone has thrown caution to the wind here. And they're going to have another push, but the rain is still falling, the umbrellas are still up, and let's see how far we can go now before somebody else oversteps their limit.
And the balls of spray are even more evident now after that last stoppage. So, yep, you're quite right. The circuit is getting wetter and wetter and wetter. And with Goethe and Taponen, of course, remaining in pit lane, well, those times are not going to be got anywhere near in the conditions now. Another one stops.
It's going to be down at Lisboa, isn't it? Up the escape road. And he would have gone straight on, and has not kept the engine running by the look of it. Needs to try and spin turn the car. Please get going. Please get going. That's straight out of the pits, down towards Lisboa, and just goes straight on. And that's Tiago Rodrigues, I reckon.
I think Mauro Engel would get quite a few participants if he ran a masterclass in how to get out of the escape road at Lisboa.
Because he'd had to do the spin turn earlier on, and he did it
supremely well.
Yeah. Never noticed he'd sort of been at the escape road. It was all done and dusted in the blink of an eye. And he just drove out like he was joining the road.
Did anyone see that?
Yep.
Good. Got away with it.
Move on. Right then. Green flag, green light still on, so the session remains live despite that car being up the escape road. Oliver Goethe and Tuukka Taponen have still not ventured back out, so they didn't need to waste their time in the last bit that never was. And they still don't have anything to really need to go out for. Red flag. Back to your tally marks.
Oh yeah, well done, thank you.
That's four.
Four.
And it's purely because the car's gone in the escape road and has stalled. Can't get going.
But the good news in all of this is we're almost halfway through. So there's only been 4 red flags in the first 20 minutes. You're looking for the positive in that as well.
Yeah.
So am I.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not great, is it? Oh dear.
Unless you tell me that it means there are fewer cars for the next part and the next part and the next part.
No, it means the second half is going to be without interruption.
Right,
It's going to be fine.
So Tiago Rodrigues triggers the stoppage, and the car will be moved out of harm's way. And the rather bedraggled marshals help that car further and further and further up the escape road, so it's not going to be in striking distance.
So it's not going to take too long to get that car to a place of safety, which means we can get the qualifying session, qualifying 1, back underway. 20 minutes and 17 seconds of this session yet to go, as they're getting used to this now, aren't they? This is the drill. Bring it back, get it stopped, get it into place, and then count down for the resumption. I'm not sure this is going to take too long. Ugo Ugochukwu brings his car in. He's still only 17 years old, you know. Competed in British F4 back in 2022. One of the McLaren Driver Development Programme drivers. US driver, and still only 17 years of age, Ugo. So the umbrellas, the rain continues to come down. Actually, heavier rain than we've seen for a long time.
And I think even when the session does go live, you might find fewer takers. Only because, as we are increasingly seeing, risk versus reward now is getting to the point that you know, pretty much everybody, I think, has done a time that is able to do.
Yes.
You're not going to be able to improve over what you've done because it's wetter.
No.
There is kind of no point now.
Yeah. Would just be a large risk, wouldn't it?
Yeah. The only benefit is mileage.
Yes.
Learning about the circuit, but you've got to be doing that at sort of 7/10 of pace to be absolutely sure that you're not going to put it anywhere near a barrier. So that is the car that was tweaked early on, Mattia Colnaghi, so they were able to sort out the damage and get him back out and running, which is quite impressive. So Colnaghi pushed back, the Richard Mille watch backed car. There also returning to the team is James Wharton, the ART Grand Prix entrant. And again, it shouldn't take too long to get the session back live. So we've got 19 drivers that have done a lap time. We know that Lou, Bowling, Darinani and Rodrigues are not going to be able to do because they've been in the wars. but there are still a number of drivers that have not done a lap time because the red flags have scuppered their chances of doing a flying lap.
Just over a minute until we get the session back underway. It's just coming up to 16:15 local time, 4:15 local time, and 16:16. So 1 minute's time is when we get the session back underway.
So Kobayashi, Sato, Kolnagi and Lee are the ones that need a lap. They haven't got anything to their names. In the case of Kolnagi, because he pitted because of damage. In the case of the others, because their laps have always been scuppered by a red flag. So those four need to be on the circuit, if nobody else.
And we just saw that the weather does not dampen the spirits of the spectators, eagerly awaiting the resumption of this session. So just about half of the session yet to go. It's all going to run beautifully now for the second half of the session. There'll be no stoppages.
I'm holding you to this.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. And
right.
then we'll have a mighty Macau road sports session at the end of this.
True enough. Right.
They were superb earlier.
Oh, they were?
They were superb.
Yeah. So 5 seconds before the green lights go on. And, I mean, that was a little bit undercooked, you've got to say, by Rodrigues to trigger that on your out lap. Not even a proper pace lap. That last red flag. But here we go again. And out goes some. But look, it's a much fuller pit lane than it used to be, as people wonder what the benefit of going out
because
really is.
They are weighing up the pros and cons, the potential things that could happen during this, and saying, you know what, we'll stick with this and we'll take our run into what happens tomorrow as far as the weather is concerned.
So the drivers that have ventured out are from 10th and back, and not all of those either. Noel on 13th hasn't gone out. I think he's banking on the fact that he knows the circuit will be able to improve tomorrow. So it's a horrible track surface now. You tiptoe your way around.
Really nasty, yeah.
Yeah.
See.
So power boating his way around. This is a driver that doesn't have a lap at all. Mathieu Kolnagi needs a lap time out of this, so let's see how he fares. He is pushing because he wants to get a bit of temperature into the tyres. There's another one at Lisboa up the escape road. That is Abkhazova, but he thankfully got it moving again. So up the escape road, as he was doing twice in free practice, Alexander Abkhazova, Kazakhstani driver. But he's still moving, that's good. Rain continues to fall ever so heavily, and Mathieu Kolnagi then threading his way, not even to a time, but to the start of the flying lap, and finding all the puddles at the same time.
So unpleasant. I mean, really so unpleasant. And just look how close the barriers are. The wall on the outside, on the inside, the barrier. This is just not very nice, and a repeat of what just happened there with Abkhazova going straight down the escape road at Lisboa. It's been a busy road, that.
Yeah. But he kept the engine running and booted it and kept the engine running after the spin turn, so he got it moving and was able to rejoin the road. So there you've got Kolnagi ahead of the French driver Enzo Deligny. The two of them making their way up towards the start of a flying lap. Deligny for our ace, and for MP Motorsport it's Kolnagi. And bear in mind, Kolnagi did some damage to the suspension early on. They've done an amazing job of getting that car back out. Those red flag stoppages helped a little bit to buy them some time. Tiptoes out of Malco hairpin. And with fewer cars on track at the minute, there should be fewer opportunities for drama.
Well, we hope so.
Yeah.
That's the theory.
Tell you what, the fans are being remarkably stoic about this, because nobody has budged. Nobody has headed for the shelter. They've all stayed to watch the cars, and even though they're wetter than mermaids' flannels right now. They've all stayed.
As soon as they see themselves on the big screen, as usual, big waves.
Yeah, true.
Hang on, I'll just put the umbrella in the other hand so I can wave.
Talking of big waves, that's what you get as the cars come through the water. Kolnagi over the timing line, right, onto a flying lap. He survived the out lap. Now he's going to do it all over again and now get a time. So let's see what he can do. Mathieu Kolnagi then accelerating down towards Mandarin. And the runner-up in the Spanish F4 Championship this year, graduating to an FR chassis. So new car to him, new circuit, and the worst weather conditions you can imagine. Welcome.
Yes. And by the way, it's not always like this.
No. No, sometimes it's drier and faster. So
yeah.
Welcome aboard. Down towards Lisboa he comes. This is increasingly the first pinch point of the lap, but he's okay there. Sideways, but he's okay.
Through Lisboa, bit of a wiggle on the run up towards San Francisco Hill. Oh, that, much more than a bit of a wiggle there. Goodness me. This is such a test, isn't it?
Oh, he's as safe as houses. He'll be right. Trust me. Through Teddy, through maternity, on the Solitude S's, and Matteo Colnaghi having an awful lot to adapt to. New track, new car, new team, really challenging conditions, and needs a lap time out of this. Even if it's not mega, he just needs a lap. The drivers take their better time out of today and tomorrow's session for their grid position, and Colnaghi needs a time. Was there a car stranded there that he's just gone past, did I see, or was that something else that was by the side of the road?
I didn't see that.
Okay, might be my eyes. It's been a long day. Colnaghi has survived, what, 2/3 of the lap?
Yeah.
Still quite a bit to go. Here is where we had Bowling in the barriers early on, and a sideways Colnaghi just about survives that as he heads up the hill now through Moorish. And then the road starts to open up a little bit up towards Donna Maria, goes over those white lines which mark out car parking spaces during the week, but equally you don't want to touch those in the wet. Painted wet markings on a track, bad news, and he has to steer clear of more of them coming down to Melco hairpin here.
Slipperiest surface known to man. Yeah, a race circuit with rain and painted markings to be avoided at all costs. Right, down towards the end of the lap now.
And a lap time beckons. This is Fisherman's through the right-hander, and then the straight down towards our bend. And as the speed starts to build, behind him is another driver pushing on, and that's Enzo Deligny. Deligny has already got a lap time to his name, at 2 minutes 40, so we'll see how this compares. But for Colnaghi, it's his first proper flying lap, and he comes up towards the line now. And a 2:52 for Colnaghi, and that will put him 20th. So he's the slowest of those that have done a lap time, but in fairness, that's no real surprise, given that he's done it now in the unofficial powerboating session.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the worst conditions, but the good news is all in one piece.
Yeah.
Because with the conditions the way they are, it's only going to take the slightest of problems, particularly here, for example, just coming out of the Melco hairpin. We saw it a number of times today. Put the power down too much, too soon, and all of a sudden you're facing the wrong way at the exit of Melco. And
tellingly, one or two drivers that ventured out have just boxed at the end of the lap. Yeah. Too wet, not going to go any quicker, don't want to risk it.
Can't do anything.
Don't like. Stop.
Yeah.
Let's wait and see. So the session continues, as you see there, Kanato Lee coming up towards the line.
Competed last year in British F4, did Kanato Lee. Came 7th in the championship, had a couple of overall race wins as well.
Well, he's up to 20th, and Rintaro Sato ahead of him is up to 21st, so Colnaghi actually drops back to 22nd in the times, but at least they've got a lap in finally, those three drivers. 12 3/4 minutes remain on the clock. This is James Wharton, still pushing on, finding quite a bit of water on the outside of the road coming out of our bend up towards the line. Goes through. If you're wondering why the car looks as it does, grey on one side and red with a sponsor on the other, it's because of an accident that he sustained in the practice session this morning. Did quite a lot of damage to that car. He dragged it around the rest of the lap as best he could, but it did do quite a lot of damage. And big aquaplaning moment as he finds a huge puddle there on the way down towards Mandarin, and that's not going to help your confidence on the way to a really fast right-hander where you need to be oh so committed.
This is taking such commitment for drivers that have such inexperience around the gear circuit here at Macau. It's just astonishing, really.
Malco hairpin in contrast. still lies there, ready to catch people out, but with still 11 3/4 minutes of the session to go, there are drivers trying to improve their times. And Sato improving 3 personal bests across the sectors. So it is possible to shuffle the order, even if we're never going to get a shuffle to the top 3 timers that were done in drier conditions. But there is something to fight for lower down. But we've only got a handful of cars really circulating at the moment, including Ugo Ugochukwu, who's gone back out. Here is Sato then, up towards the line. And a 2:47.6, the lap time. So an improvement. 3 improvements, bookended by slower sectors. But Sato then, 20th. Finds a bit of pace out of the car on that last lap. So Oliver Goethe remaining the fastest as he was in free practice, but a very, very difficult qualifying session, not only in terms of the weather, but in terms of what he's going to do to the grid. It might do nothing at all if tomorrow is drier, but if it is drier and people have to commit, we might end up in a similar situation of lots of interruptions.
Umbrellas are up. And it's beginning to brighten up as well.
Yeah.
It's a most peculiar afternoon, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Now the next one to keep an eye on here is Jin Nakamura, who is 18th at the moment and heads up towards the beam, goes through now, and a 2:52.4, not an improvement, stays 18th then, Nakamura. Who else have we got pressing on? 10 more minutes to go. And as the drivers start to get into a rhythm, there's a little bit more confidence, maybe. Yeah, I know the track is horrible and wet and nasty and it's ready to catch you out, but drivers being perhaps able to push just that little bit harder now. Past that big grandstand on the approach to Lisboa, and there, heading up towards Donna Maria once again, is Mathieu Colnaghi. Gets to the top of the hill, goes left, car swings through, and FR machinery competing in Macau for the first time, but continuing this long tradition of Macau Grand Prix, and from Formula Atlantic to Formula 3, a couple of years or so of F4, and then FR starting a new chapter in the event's history. You can see where they are cutting through the water at certain parts of the circuit, and I just wonder whether it might have eased, if not stopped raining, it might have eased ahead of us. I
think it's easing right off because, as we were saying just a couple of minutes ago, it looks a little bit brighter. Our own little barometer, the security man with the poncho on, has taken his hood off, so that's a good sign. It's the damage has been done to the track, hasn't it? These huge plumes of spray. The only good thing is that with so few cars on the circuit, you can kind of pitch it so you're not running in the spray of somebody else.
True.
And you can try and do as much as you can to pick your own lines. So that's the one advantage that we have, but it's horrible. It's really not very nice.
So Oliver Goethe watching all of this, as are now all of the drivers in the top 7. Cooper Webster, we've not really touched on yet. He got up to 8th, and he's gone back out for a look. And Murray Boyer, who is 11th, has gone out for a look as well. But as we keep making the point, they're not going to improve their lap times.
How important was that lap that we talked about of Oliver Goethe's right at the start of this session? Absolutely vital.
Indeed, and the same for Taponen and Brinicello behind, because they were the 3 that got through before the red flag came out. So there, a run up towards eternity, and another big slide as the back wags. Who was that? 55. So that's the car of Ritaro Sato. Just about survived that.
That could have been a lot worse, couldn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Sato 21st at the moment.
Under 7 minutes of this session remain now, and what was that for car number 2? For Brinicello, just had a notification crossing the pit lane exit. Notification for car number 2.
Yeah. So that's Rinichella, who is third, but may not survive that, depending on what happens to the outcome of the investigation.
Following this lap for Rintaro Sato. Talking about Takuma Sato this morning, weren't we? Oh dear, this is not good news. So
it's Kobayashi.
Yeah, Kobayashi's car.
Same again, he's gone up the escape road at Lisboa by the look of it, and then tries to turn the car around, and that's where, if you let the reds drop, you're in strife. And once the car is stalled, it does not instantly like restarting. And with 6 minutes to go, if that stops it, I think that will stop it for good.
I think you're probably right.
Because there's barely any point going back out. We'll see. We'll see. It would be 3 minutes for an out lap. And anyway, we'll wait and see what transpires.
That was a correction.
Yeah.
It wasn't car number 2, but car number 5.
Enzo Deligny for crossing the white line at pit exit.
It's a correction.
Yeah, okay. And there is Kobayashi trying to get going. So Rikuto Kobayashi stranded up the escape road. And he's done what Kai Darianani did. He's ended up getting the car at 90 degrees to the road, and that makes it even more dangerous there, because if anybody else goes straight on, the road is virtually blocked. An escape road is there for safety, and if it's blocked by a car, it ain't safe, is it? And there he is, gets it wrong, coming into the corner, and goes up the escape road rather than try and make the corner and hit the barrier, then needs to turn it around, and this is where it all goes south on him.
That's been the busiest road all day today, hasn't it? The escape road at Lisboa. Better that they do that than, unfortunately, hit the barrier down there at Lisboa, but it has been a bit problematic during this session for the FR World Cup.
Murray Boyer, who had gone out for a look, has come back into the pit lane as well, as we see Kanato Lee pressing on also, going up through San Francisco. And 4 minutes remain for Oliver Goethe. Another one that's been looked at crossing the pit lane exit line is Théophile Nael. Some race directors will tell you, treat that white line as a barrier. You wouldn't drive into a barrier, don't drive into the white line. And it's there to demark the cars leaving the pits at a slower speed from those on a flying lap at full racing speed.
I've seen a bit of that today, haven't we? Quite a few sort of investigations.
Red flag.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's going to be
5.
the 5th, and it's for Kobayashi down at Lisboa. Session will not be resumed, so when I said if it stops again, that'll be it, I wasn't far off.
Yep.
That was the most bitty qualifying session I can remember.
That was really tricky, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, with those 3 drivers early on in the session, making a lap count early on in the session, you never know what's going to happen. I don't know what the weather forecasting systems that the teams have got here, but that was a glimpse into the future for Goethe, Taponen and Rinichella, putting those laps in nice and early in the session. And they have cars that are very much in one piece, which is good news.
Indeed. Yes, to say qualifying is all about timing is rather obvious, but that was about timing and when you got a lap in relative to a red flag that you couldn't control at all. And whatever the plan was, you know, we saw Prema after the first stoppage lag back, send the cars out, and then they couldn't get the lap in because the next red flag came. You can have a great plan and it all goes wrong. So 2 out of 2 today for Oliver Goethe. Perhaps mirroring what Luke Browning did last year. He could be the man to beat this weekend. Oliver Goethe fastest from Tuukka Taponen and then Valerio Rinichella. Rashid Deheri 4th, Freddie Slater 5th, Matteo De Paolo 6th, ahead of Alex Dunne, Cooper Webster, Dino Beganovic, and 10th, Théophile Nael. Then Murray Boyer from Enzo Deligny and Noel. Ugo Ugochukwu 14th, James Wharton was next from Evan Giltaire, Kanato Lee. And a little bit further down, you can see how many drivers crashed or went off on their either out lap or first flying lap, didn't get a lap time in. Kobayashi 23rd, but they'll all be hoping that it is drier tomorrow and they can get some proper mileage in, some proper lap times in for the 2024 Macau Grand Prix, the FIA FR World Cup. Qualifying 2 will be tomorrow. So Oliver Goethe ends day 1 of the Macau Grand Prix as the man to beat, fastest in free practice and in a much interrupted qualifying session. And they'll all be hoping for much drier conditions tomorrow here in Macau.